Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Ariel's first ever Ask Me Anything. My name is Elsa Powell-Strong, and I am Ariel's VP of Solution Strategy. And I am delighted to be here with my colleague and friend, Richard Richards, who is one of Ariel's top facilitators and executive coaches. Just take the compliment, Richard. I know I'm going to be, talking you up. And we're going to be recording this session, and we'll send out the recording afterwards so that you can review it and share it with anyone else who might be interested or benefit from it. So for the next half an hour, Richard and I are going to be answering your questions about coaching and what it could mean for you. So don't worry if you weren't able to submit your questions in advance. We will be taking your questions in the chat to the best that we can, and we'll be putting it all together for a really good conversation. So let's kick it off with a short poll.
Yep, no, thank you, Elsa. I'd love to know, before we kick things off here, how many of you have actually had personal or professional coaching at some time in your life? And I'm seeing that some of you are already doing this, so thank you for jumping in here. A large proportion, Elsa, have actually had coaching experience, which is great.
Yeah, so we'll give another moment, and then we'll go and we'll share the results. So good, it's about, 58% have, 42 haven't, so a good balance here.
Yeah, that's great news. That's great news. That'll give us a great foundation to have the conversation on. Hopefully you'll be able to sort of add some value here around your own experiences around coaching, what's worked and what hasn't. Actually, which leads me to think, Elsa, I'd love for people to chat, if you would, please, by typing into the chat field down there, what are some of the qualities that you associate with a great coach? And I'm talking here not necessarily just about skills or techniques or models or frameworks. I'm talking here really about the qualities, the quality of being in that coaching relationship. What does that feel like to you? What do they bring in terms of spirit and energy and their presence to the coaching conversation? What are those very specific qualities that make a coach a great coach and signal for a great experience? Go ahead and type into chat and let me know, based on your experience, or what you'd like to have if you haven't actually experienced professional coaching before.
Yeah. And Richard, as we're waiting for folks to think about their answers and type those in, maybe I could share some of the qualities that I've always benefited from, are someone who is like really caring and present to me. Those have been a few. So for those of you that are starting to think, like, what are those specific qualities of someone that's really made a difference for you? So great, we have one.
That's so right, Elsa. I think those two qualities of present caring for me are central to coaching. Without those two there on the coach's side, it's very difficult for the coachee to feel confident to open up, or to feel that the coachee actually cares about them. And so much about a coaching relationship is based on the coach feeling actually as though the person that they're working with has potential. Because if we go back to John Whitmore's classic definition of coaching, right, what a coach does is they unlock the potential that exists in other people. So to do that, you've actually got to believe the other person has potential to be able to unlock it. And therefore that idea about being fully present to the person and caring about them deeply is really central to coaching, I think.
Yeah. So I've gotten some thoughts in from here, and I think they came in as some direct messages, but so creating an environment for people to feel safe and become aware of their own questions and feelings. A coach is able to help them find answers with active listening and with helping questions and supportive questions.
No, I think that business about creating a safe space, Elsa, again, is also central to coaching. So much about coaching requires the coachee to be willing to be vulnerable about what they're thinking, what they're feeling, what's not working for them, and then being able to own that as the first step to moving forwards to change that. And clearly the coach can create either the sense of a safe environment or not, depending on the quality of their presence, that those dimensions of being present and caring, right? And it's therefore central, again, to a great coaching conversation, is that safe space to really open up and explore what's holding people back.
Yeah, fantastic. So I think as as we're going through, continue to type your thoughts into the chat. I want to move on to a first question to kick us off, Richard, of is coaching for everyone?
Well, what a great question, huh? I mean, of course, I'm going to have a slight bias here, Elsa. My bias is that, yes, coaching is for everyone. Clearly, it becomes so in some respects a business decision. Coaching is not a cheap alternative. And therefore, when you're looking at the return on investment of coaching, you're going to bring in an external coach. You have to really be thoughtful about what level of the organization you're going to bring the coach in for, or what is the change that you need to make, and therefore what is the return on investment. Certainly in my own experience, I've done coaching with salespeople at a junior level, all the way through CEO and C-suite people at a senior level. And it really depends on what you want to happen. I think the other thing to consider is that the coaching is not done only by external coaches, that organizations can build their own internal bench strength around coaching. And then I think coaching has a place at absolutely every level of the organization. Because ultimately what we're looking at doing is we're looking at taking somebody's ability, their potential, and we're looking to enhance it in service of what they need to do or what they want to do in terms of their own development or in terms of the needs of the organization. So coaching, I think, is essential. And organizations will often talk about an organization having a coaching mindset. As they look for opportunities to coach, whether it's a quick, short 5-minute hallway conversation through a coaching mindset, or whether it's a longer engagement in a more formal contracting process around specific development goals.
Can you say more about that coaching mindset? I'm curious about how you would define that.
Yeah, I think a coaching mindset. So obviously at the foundation of that is John Whitmore's belief that you've got to actually believe that somebody has the potential to be developed. I think the other thing then is also that you go into a conversation with somebody recognizing that by and large, most people actually have the solutions to their own development needs, or they have their solutions to what needs to happen. Now that's not always the case, but by and large people do. So a coaching mindset is going in there with the idea that the other person knows what needs to happen. And what you're doing is you're helping them discover that idea. And the moment they discover the solution for themselves, or they discover what they could be doing differently, they have a sense of ownership. And once they have a sense of ownership, they're much more likely to follow through on what it is they need to do differently, or making sure it translates into work. There are obviously elements of coaching that includes feedback, and feedback may be the foundation for a coaching conversation. But once you go to a coaching mindset, what happens is that you begin to build in the protagonist, in other words, the coachee, the mindset that they own their responsibility for the development. And as a coach, I can certainly guide and help and prod and ask provocative questions, but I'm not the person that's going to make it happen. The coachee has to make it happen. Which is why I think, again, at the foundation of a good coaching conversation is a coachee who wants to be coached.
Yeah.
If a person doesn't want to be coached, it's not going to work. There has to be a sense of willingness to be coached.
So, I would say everyone says that their coaching is special. And I think it is, right? But, you have been coaching with Ariel for many years and really leaned into our approach for coaching. So what do you think is unique about Ariel's approach for coaching?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question, Elsa. And clearly there are many, many wonderful coaching organizations out there, all with their own skill set, their own approach, and their own methodologies. Certainly, I've been coaching with Ariel now for about 16 years. And I think certainly what Ariel brings to the table is a couple of things. I think, first of all, our focus is really around this idea of presence. And as we know, presence is this ability to really connect with other people, to be able to connect with hearts and minds of people, recognizing that people sort of live and communicate at both an emotional and an intellectual level, but then also to do so in a way that's authentic, where I'm being true to myself and the other person therefore knows I'm being authentic and trusts me. So looking at this lens of presence, of course, we have 4 dimensions. We have the dimension, you mentioned one of them already, this idea about being fully present. Am I here in the moment and really listening, really focusing on you? Or am I allowing some distraction on that WhatsApp message that's just come in, or my phone that's just zapped me, right? So it's this idea about being fully present. And then, of course, the other dimension of my ability to reach out to other people, to build relationship, to have empathy, to be able to understand the world through their lens, to walk in their shoes as we communicate and build a sense of trust and connection. Then, of course, the third dimension, congruency. Am I able to express my messages in a way where my face and my body and my language are all congruent with what I really want to express? In other words, is there a sense of what I'm saying? It has depth, it has authenticity. And then finally, I think presence is also about, as an individual communicating, do I know what I am? Do I know what I stand for? Am I aware of my principles? Do I know what I'm good at? Do I know what I'm not good at? And not allow what I'm not good at to hold me hostage, but allow me to shine on the things I know I'm confident at doing. So these 4 dimensions, I think, first of all, underpin the coaching that we do at Ariel. Then I think the second thing that differentiates things for me, Elsa, and I'm sure other organizations probably do the same, but I think it's really central to who we are, is this sort of deep sense of caring and a very personal relationship with the coachee. So as you know, the work that we do is really around unlocking people's most generous selves, this idea about what is it that they can do to really be their most effective selves. And I think as an Ariel coach, we come into this with a deep sense of caring for the coachee. And this translates into what you said before, this idea about being present and caring, right? Being central to a coaching relationship. And I think that's what really differentiates the way that we do things. We look at an individual, not to come in with the 5 steps for this or the 8 steps for that or the 2 things you've got to do. What we look to do is not create clones of something that's presence, but to meet an individual where they're at and then help them develop in a way that feels authentic to them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I'm curious, as you're describing these caring moments with, what are you finding that people are struggling with these days? Like, what are the topics? I mean, it's such a broad topic. Like, when you're really bringing that care, what are people bringing to the forefront?
It's very interesting, Elsa, and it's a great question. And obviously, things have been different in the last couple of years with the pandemic, and we see different things bubbling to the surface than we might have seen 2 years ago. I think one thing that's important to say is that oftentimes people will step into a coaching relationship thinking they're going to be working on one area, right? One specific goal or a specific set of goals they want to work on. And what happens is, as we go into the coaching relationship, oftentimes we'll unlock something that wasn't expected. Because clearly coaching is a forward-looking exercise. We're looking to move the individual forward in whatever the development area is. What we oftentimes have to do, though, is to go backwards first of all, find out what past experiences were that are causing belief systems or narratives that are holding back from people going to the next level. So what the people walk in is often different from what we end up coaching. So that's the first thing. I think the second thing is a lot of the coaching that I do is typically around either people's lack of confidence in their ability to speak up, in their ability to confront more senior leadership, in their ability to have difficult conversations. That's often an area where people need help. The other area where people help is to develop themselves to become inspiring speakers. And what does an inspiring speaker look and sound like? And what are they doing that's detracting from their ability to be inspiring? Because I think the work that we do oftentimes is revealing to people things they don't know about themselves. We think that we communicate one way, and then somebody listens to you and sees you do things. By the way, did you realize that there were almost 12 ums in that sentence of 15 seconds? Oh, no. So it's this idea that we shine the light on things that people don't. Did you know that every time you talk and you present, you're kind of doing, I haven't got any hair, Elsa, but if I did have hair, it's kind of this sort of weeping gesture that people do with their hair as they're on the camera, right? And they don't realize they're constantly touching their hair when they're talking and what that does for their presence and their status. So it's almost like we are a human video recorder that plays back what we see. But we play back not just what we see, but the impact it has on us. And it's that insight of the impact of what people are doing that oftentimes they don't realize is undermining their presence and their status in the eyes of other people. And sometimes just unlocking that and knowing that and fixing that gives them a renewed sense of confidence in dealing or speaking up to other people.
Great, thank you. So we have some questions from the group. So I'll ask these. But to everybody, type into the chat any reactions you have to anything you're hearing. You can type in additional questions. Really would love to create this as a conversation. So I'll read this question, but please get in there and let's hear from you. So
Please, yes.
This question comes from Tracy. So how does a coach discover the potential of the individual that they think that they can bring out?
Tracy, what a great question, and thanks for asking. I'm going to suggest, Casey, it is more art than science. To be absolutely realistic, in my years of experience, and I've got enough years under my belt that I think I speak more from experience than science, that's for sure. It was never my strong subject. But I think, Tracy, what happens is first of all, we look at what is the coachee, what is it they want to work on? And people oftentimes identify pretty accurately what it is they have. And then as we work with them, and as we watch them, and as we listen to them, and as we observe them deeply through a caring lens, we begin to see little things that we think, oh, that's a quality that I wonder if you realize. And then I might reflect that back. Do you know what I'm hearing here, Johnny? I'm hearing that it sounds to me like you really like this, or that you really value that quality in other people, or that it sounds to me like you're really good at this. And Johnny says, I hadn't thought about it like that. Interesting. So oftentimes just reflecting back what we're seeing and hearing or thinking or feeling oftentimes as well opens up a window for Johnny that perhaps he didn't have before. So I think it's this idea about, again, looking always through the lens of thinking about the maximum potential for this person and looking for those little niches, those little niches that perhaps the person has overlooked. Because what happens is, I think, as human beings, we get so focused on what we don't think we can't do. And that pulls us hijack, it holds us there, and we overlook all the great things that we have or we can do or we'd like to do. And I think a coach's role is just beginning to unlock those little niches and just remind us that they're there and say, so I'm seeing this. Is that something you'd like to explore?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Richard, it reminds me of conversations that you and I have had when you've coached me. And one of the other things that you have done to help me unlock my potential is, you allow me to start with my own logic or explanation of what's going on and validate that and, validate it so that I can continue to unpack what makes sense to me. And Michelle actually typed in here is like, that the coach is a mirror describing the coachee's, experience and impact, because it's like when you've validated me, then I can let go of my explanation, and then I might consider some other reasons that are behind what's going on. So I've just really appreciated that approach for helping us co-discover my potential. Is that listening that you bring.
No, and I think you've hit on something really important there, Elsa, and that is the fact it goes back, first of all, to the conversation we had earlier about a safe space. I have to create a space where you're willing to open up like that, right? Number one. Number two, I think it goes back to a basic coaching adage, and that is that the coach should really be talking no more than 20 to 30% of the time, and the coachee is the one that's doing the discovery and the talking, and the coach is creating the space, holding the space sacred for that coachee to open up and talk. And yes, to your point, as a coachee, oftentimes when you explain something, what's going on, first of all, I'm going to validate it so you feel safe opening up even more. Obviously, that's the first thing I'm going to do. I'm always going to yes and what you're saying, right? And then secondarily, what's fascinating about coaching is that as you begin to unpack what you think's going on, and I create the space for you to do that, all these other little things drop into your mind and you start to see solutions, or you start to see why reasons are happening, because we've created a space for you to actually focus on yourself. And I think that's one of the great values about coaching, is that it's about focusing on yourself. And we do so little of that. We spend so little time just taking care of us.
Yeah. So, and let's turn to the chat. So thank you, Christine. I like this as a presentation coach. I consistently have to be genuine, empathetic, and graceful in my coaching. I love that word, graceful. It is a balance between crushing someone's spirit and emboldening them with the tools and understanding of how they can have a greater impact. That crushing the spirit, I laugh, but there is like, I think some of the best coaching I've ever gotten, like it took me a while to kind of sit with it, because it was something that was so important, that's something that I was dealing with. And so sometimes as a coach, you can, you have to have those hard conversations with people that will allow them to grow. So thank you for bringing that up.
Yes, I love that.
So, Danielle asked, this is a great question. As long as the coach is highly skilled, how important is it to just find the right fit in the coach-coachee relationship?
Danielle, that's a wonderful question. And it really, I think, is, again, essential to a good coaching conversation. Certainly, when I do a coaching with anybody at all, I will always do a chemistry check as my first conversation with the coachee to make sure that we have a sense of rapport and we have a sense that we can work together. And obviously, the first option is for the coachee to say, Richard, I'm not sure you're the right coach for me. I hope this is okay, but I'm going to try and find somebody else. And that's completely okay. It's about chemistry and rapport and communication. Sometimes it just doesn't gel. But sometimes as well, I will say as a coach, if I meet a coachee I don't think I can work with, I will also say, Freddie, I'm not sure that I'm going to be the best coach for you. I don't know if I'm going to be the one that's going to really be able to work on what you need to work on. And I will also work away from that. I think it's really important that we have that option on both sides to recognize that it may not always work. And that's okay. Because at the end of the day, the quality of the coaching is going to depend on that level of trust and the quality of the relationship.
Mm-hmm. And that actually could move into the next piece, because you talk about that chemistry check, that conversation. How do you think about structuring the coaching experience? I mean, does it have to be long? Can it be short? Like, what are the different types of coaching engagements that you have seen work?
So, and I think what's interesting, coaching engagements can look like anything at all. So I've just finished a coaching engagement with a senior executive in a pharmaceutical company, and we had a coaching engagement for 2 years. I saw her through all sorts of ups and downs, organizational changes, changes in jobs, changes in ownership, and the relationship has just ended now. So that's a 2-year engagement of meeting once a month or once every 6 weeks. Then, of course, I have other coaching engagements where I'll see people just twice for 2 one-hour sessions. And it's a very specific focus about a specific area of their presence or their communication skills. Then there are other programs that we do with other organizations where we have a very programmatic structure, where we have a very structured sort of intake around feedback from sponsors and others. A chemistry check, 6 one-hour sessions, and then a closing checkout in terms of, again, feedback to sponsors and HR people. And then I've done coaching engagements where I get called in just for a one-off presentation. Says, Richard, I've got to do a big presentation next week. I need some help. And I get called in then for an hour just to work on their presentation. And I will give some insights about what they can do differently to make it more relevant to them. Another engagement I did once, which was absolutely fascinating, was I was called into a company to work on their first market days presentation. And in this situation, I was brought in along with a company that specialized in communication around shareholder value. I mean, you're speaking publicly to the shareholders for the first time. And it was a wonderful experience because now I've got people who are working on the content and I'm coming in working on presence. And I'm working for a half day with the 6 C-suite members who are going to stand up and talk about their company to their new shareholders. And that, again, was a very different experience, but there I'm working with a team of people. I worked previously in the same organization with their C-suite when a new CEO came in and she wanted to reestablish the C-suite perspective and the culture of the organization around the new guard. And again, I was working then with 6 or 7 of the senior leaders in positioning their presence. So it started to feel like, oh, we've got a new guard here, a new person's coming in. Oh, this feels a little bit different. And it was, again, wonderful to work with a team. So it's individuals, it's working with teams, it's working for short engagements, long engagements that start off at a 2-hour session and end up being 8 hours. And it's all over the map.
Mm. I love hearing the investment that you put into these. I can just hear it, right? That each of these coaching engagements is like a work of art for you. And I'm curious about, what are some of the memorable results or impacts, from your coaching engagements that you have remembered, right? That people might be interested in.
That's actually a really tough question. I'll tell you why, quite frankly. At my age, I have these wonderful engagements. To your point, I sink in and get super, super present. And then, of course, once they're finished, the only way I can move on to somebody else to sort of compartmentalize that experience and put it away in a file, I have endless notes so I can always go back, but then I go on to the next person. I dig in deeply with that person, and that's the only person in the world that matters at that moment. But I think, in general, the sorts of shifts I see that come out of coaching are where people come in feeling either as though they can't do what they want to do, or they know what they want, they can't quite do it, or they're people who come in lacking confidence or lacking self-esteem, or people who come in who say, my God, I hate presenting, I have this bloody presentation next week and I don't know what to do. And I get an email from them a couple of days after they'd done the presentation. Richard, I nailed it. And it's those little notes you get afterwards that says, Richard, remember that conversation I was frightened of having? You know, I had it. I took on board some of your ideas and some of the things we explored, and it worked. So it's really all over the map, but it's typically about people not being able to do something. We spend some time together. They go away and discover that actually relatively small things can make things work better. And then I get a note back that says, Richard, it worked.
Oh,
And it's so funny because, yes, I pour my heart and soul into coaching. And it's when you get those notes back that says, okay, yeah, this was worth it. This is what it's about. This is all that matters, you know?
Yes,
It's like
yes,
nothing
the juice.
else.
The juice. So we have about 4 minutes left. So folks, if you have any questions and additional questions or even just comments, like would love to hear what you're seeing for yourself, how this resonates with your own perspectives on coaching. Just type that into the chat. We'd love to, hear from you.
I love Michelle Ranson's comment here about this idea about the coachee being responsible for their own challenge and progress. It's really not the coach's responsibility. They are there to guide, to create the space, to ask, to your point, Elsa, the provocative questions that sometimes hopefully don't make people feel crushed, but certainly move things forward. But yes, the coachee has got to be allowed to feel that they are completely responsible and completely in control. And it's for this reason, Elsa, I'll often ask at the end of the session, so how did that go? Is there anything I should have been doing differently? Is there anything I should be changing in the way I'm working with you to make this even more productive? Because that feedback to me is also really important. And again, it gives the coachee the sense that they are actually owning the process.
Great. So there's so we have a bunch of questions came in. So first is like how someone asked about coaching on strategic career moves. And I know that you focus on communication and presence. What advice could you give around coaching on strategic career moves?
Well, I think the first thing is that typically I don't give advice. It's not really my role as a coach, right? What I will do, though, is I'll help people think through why they're making the strategic career move. What is it that it's going to give them that they haven't got already? Where does it fit in with who they are and who they want to be and what they want to be in life? And what is, from my own perspective, what is the footprint they want to leave behind in this world when they go? And it's sort of just asking the questions that help them think through it, because clearly I'm not a career coach. And I know the boundaries about what I can coach around. And quite frankly, I think if somebody's looking to create a career move and they want to talk to me, they need to understand that I'm going to come at this from the perspective of looking at what is it for you? What is it about you and this position that's really either clicking? And is there something perhaps you've thought about that isn't quite clicking? And I'm going to hopefully unlock that for you. But I would always be really thoughtful of where my boundaries lie, I think.
Great. And so last question. So where is the coaching process not a contribution? What challenges are not right for coaching?
So, I mean, that's another really wonderful question, and you could talk for hours about that. I think in general, what often gets confused are the three things: mentoring, coaching, and feedback. They are all very different. And I think what's really clear, and the most important one perhaps, is to be very clear about the difference between coaching and feedback. Feedback may be the catalyst for a coaching conversation. Feedback may be part of a coaching conversation, but a coaching conversation is very different from giving feedback. They're both essential in management, they're both essential in leadership and managing people, but just to be very clear that a coaching conversation is really when you're looking to help the coachee unlock what it is they could be doing differently, what it is that needs to happen, what's holding them back, and then empowering them to go away and do that. Giving feedback is something you observe that's not working, that needs to be fixed, oftentimes associated with a short-term need, but it's really very different from coaching. And sadly, I think many people conflate the two into one activity to the disservice of both, I believe.
Great. Richard, we're at our time.
Oh, no.
I know. It went by so fast. I know both you and I were like, we could talk about this forever.
Yes.
And thank you everyone so much for coming. Emily, a friend, you can put up our note for everybody, our closing sort of slide for folks. You can please reach out to us. We have more resources on our blog. Check out our website, arielgroup.com. You can find us on LinkedIn, find us on Twitter, find us everywhere. We really appreciate this. Ask us more questions. We want to be in touch with you and support you to have all of your presence and communication questions answered. So thank you again. And again, we'll be sending out that recording. We'll make that available so that you can review it and share it with others. All the best, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.